Bruce here, and in this coffee chat we're going to be drinking some coffee with your good selves and talking about Strats and a few other things. So this really is a Strat, a beautiful Strat, S-type, otherwise I'll get cancelled, but I won't call it a Strat. ESP navigator, doesn't matter though, you know, it's a Strat shape neck. And this is a one-piece body, which is older. It's a one-piece older body, which is over 20 years old. And because this body was made in 2001 by the ESP custom shop to replicate a Strat, and this neck was made in 2012. There were two different guitars which we swapped around the necks and bodies, and this has got a soft V, kind of like the Eric Clapton signature, and it's a one-piece maple neck with a skunk stripe. It came with vintage frets, which were pretty much like the frets were in the sort of mid to late 50s, and I've swapped them out for 6100, which were the frets which people like Martin Knopfler use on these Les Paul apparently, and obviously Steve Ray Vaughan. And what that enables me to do is have 11s, okay, because I love to play 11s. That may change, but I've been playing 11s for the last 20 years, and I can bend. You know, if you're doing the one finger bend, so it just makes it easier to bend the 11s, because if you try and bend 11s on vintage frets, you have to work a lot harder, and the lower frets is going to be harder. So that really does help. These are Seymour Duncan Antiquity pickups, but I got Alan Dingwall here in the UK, great winder, to rewind them. And that's nothing to say that Seymour Duncans aren't good, but they just weren't good in this particular guitar. I'm a believer as well is that even if you don't have the perfect pickup set, if you just leave them and just tweak the heights, you can find the sweet spot and kind of get used to them, you know, make them work for you. So the kind of things you don't always have to be changing things all the time if you don't like it. You know, and we're going to get into tweaking the Strat. These actual tuners are the go-to ones, and these are the ones which have got the same kind of metallurgy, if you will, as the ones in the 50s and 60s like Fender used. So these are really cool, and I think it's the only brand that actually does a proper replica. Even the Fender Masterbuilt have the wrong metal on the tuners. Does that make a difference for the tone? Who knows, but maybe some percentage, I don't know. You can tell me. So you've got the string tree here. Although I've noticed some of them have a round kind of one, but this one has this type, which is more like a string tree. And what else? Yeah, this is really interesting. So this is the saddles, because I was using raw vintage, I used Callahan, you know, back in the day. You know, on the gear page it was all about Callahan, and then they weren't that great in the end because they weren't using the right metals. So then we all went to raw vintage, which was a Japanese make, and now we've come home to England because apparently this is made in England, and this is made in a factory where they've again studied the metallurgy of the original bridge plate and saddles, and it's softer metal, so it doesn't ping so much. And the tone's meant to be more a vintage style, and this is Crazy Parts. Who, you know, I'm not advertising Crazy Parts. You know, there's good and bad reviews about Crazy Parts I've heard, but these are from Crazy Parts, and so it's a scratch plate. I think it's you know, the same material as well. So that's a bit of investment, and the block as well. Again, we all used to use Callahan blocks, but now apparently this Crazy Parts block is getting closest to it. At the moment, 3 of these springs are raw vintage, but 2 aren't. And I need to get some more raw vintage springs. I think they're the best springs, you know. They just, you know, they just sound better. These parts here, all the screws, by the way, on this guitar are from our 60s, 50s, 60s screws. Again, the same style used on the old Strats. Neck plate, can't remember the name. These screws are the 60s screws like Fender used. So all in all, it's a really nice guitar. So there you go, Riviera Paradise, Stevie Ray Vaughan, and I'm just throwing a few, if you ever want to learn that, I'm probably going to do a lesson on how to solo over Riviera Paradise, because you've got loads of options. Anyway, back to this. So yeah, this is the 610 fret wire that made it into, you know, a great guitar so that I can play. Actually, on the live version, it goes. That's a great live version. I think, you know, what really cool was Stevie Ray Vaughan did Superstition. You know, rather than doing that riff, he just got a jazz way of playing an E minor 7. First finger on the 7th fret, A string, on the A, G and E, and then put your little pinky on the B string, 8th fret. And you got the low E. And that's just genius in the details there, because it's so simple yet so effective. But that's Stevie Ray Vaughan. So this guitar really is great for all the Stevie stuff, Buddy Guy stuff, Albert King. And another thing is really good, because I like the heavier gauges and the bigger frets, because like Jimi Hendrix did this wicked version of you know, and when he started for the intro, it was. And you can do that when you've got bigger strings and you've got the bigger frets. Things kind of stay more in tune, so that's another reason. Let's go over to the Rosewood Strat, which is pretty much identical. The only difference is I think these are called Secret Spirit pickups, also by Alan Dingwall. So this guitar actually needs to be rewired, because as Tom Bukovac, the amazing session guy from Nashville, said, it's better to only have a few guitars, because you're always maintaining. If you're playing these guitars professionally, and even you know, as a hobby, they always seem to need maintenance, at least in my hands. And so this is, the electronics have gone here, the switch has gone or something, because I do actually do, you know, I use that sort of trick, you know, the old, and I've broken the switch or something, some wires falling out. Probably a little bit better than the pickups, because in the other guitar they're rewound, so, you know, but again for the Stevie, and the radius is, I think it's around 9 to 10. I don't really like the 7.5. I know that's kind of got in vogue again, but I prefer a flatter radius, you know, more around 10 for bending, obviously. It's easier for that kind of stuff. Another thing, this has got the Crazy Parts, exactly the same thing. Crazy Parts, Alan Dingwall pickups, Crazy Parts. This is Crazy Parts celluloid scratch plate, so it will shrink. You know, you've got 5 raw vintage saddle springs. This block is also Crazy Parts. This has got an ESP neck plate and standard Goto. It hasn't got the kind of cool Goto tuners the other one has, but maybe that's an upgrade I could do. 610 fret wire and laminate rosewood, because this is Honduras rosewood, which I prefer. 2-piece. So these 2 guitars are both order. This has got 3-tone sunburst, which is a later configuration, rather than the 2-tone ash. I actually prefer ash on a rosewood neck to ash with a maple. I think ash and maple for me a little bit too bright, just the way I play the guitar. So I love alder and rosewood and alder and maple. That's my kind of thing. This guitar is really good. Again, the Jimi Hendrix song Testify. So what I'm trying to do on that Testify song is really take the listener on a journey of those 3 chords. You got your E7, B7, back to E7, and then A7, back to E7. So it sounds like this. And so that's kind of, you know, obviously we've got the bass and drums happening, then you can play a bit more sort of sparsely. So that's kind of the way I play, you know, even if I'm playing HL. You know, I'm playing on the chord, I always try to play the chords, every chord, and take something from a chord. Having a Strat set up, you know, if you're playing if you've got the Strat set up properly, guys, you can play it like a Les Paul, a Telly, you know, it's just got that, you know, whatever I play on the 335, I want to be able to play on the Strat, and vice versa. And that's kind of how I tend to set a Strat up, so almost you can play, you know, jazz on it. I tend to have the action lower, and I get some people ask me how I set my action up, and there's no rule. There's no rule for me. You know, I guess like you could measure it, and maybe there would be, you know, all my guitars have a similar action. But the way I do it is this. This, like for example, the Maple Neck Strat had a refret, came back to me, action was too high for me. Okay, because you know people think, okay, Ramon's got bigger strings and 6100 frets, he's going to want a high action. It's not the case. So what I do, and no one can know it, only you can do this, is you get your little Allen key and you put it on the saddles, okay? And then what you do is you literally just do a tiny bit of a turn. It could be an eighth of a turn, even a 16th of a turn. and you do it on all the things. Obviously you have to retune the guitar up to concert, and then do it again. And when you've got the right feel, it's called the sweet spot. That sweet spot is what your fingers like, because if it's too low, these strings, especially the B and the E, they're just too kind of like cobwebs. They're just too thin. So you've got to get enough action, get these B and E strings up enough so that they start, you can get underneath them, so they sound meaty. Because like I said, too low they'll start to sound thin. You won't be able to bend properly with them. But you don't want to have them too high, because then you can't run scales. So that's a really thing that you can only do yourself, and you've got to find the sweet spot, and you've got to get used to doing it. So that's what I do. And the action can change because of the seasons, Obviously, if you live in the desert, it's probably not going to change much. But here in England, we've got 4 seasons. The guitar's going to move a little bit, so then you have to get your Allen key out again and just find that sweet spot where you can play a nice chord. And that's really what you've got to do. You've got to get the Allen key and find that sweet spot. And I do it. I've really got used to it over the years, doing it with the Strat, especially with the Strat, and until I can bend it, and the vibrato as well. Any way you can hit the guitar really hard. If you haven't got the right action, those kind of songs are going to be harder to play. So that's really another thing. Is even playing on the lower strings. Another little thing I find. I want to keep the gauge pretty uniform, so I'm going from 11. I don't really like really bassy strings, so with the 11 gauge I'm going 28, 38, 49. On this guitar here, which is the Stevie Ray Vaughan Strat, this is set up totally like Stevie Ray Vaughan, except I've got a 12 in E flat. These are in concert, but this is in E flat. So my Maple and my Rosewood are in concert, but this one's in E flat. And this one, I do put a 12 on it, and the rest are Stevie's gauge that he was well known for. And it's got the reverse trem, of course, the left-handed trem with the bar hanging over the top. And these are the Alan Dingwall SRV pickups. It's actually in the process of just upgrading it at the moment, doing a few things to it. But this is set up exactly Stevie style. This one here, however, is not. This is not a Stevie Ray Vaughan Strat. This is just what I've told you today is my personal preference of what I like. Obviously, if you can get an original from the 1960s or 50s tremolo system, that's amazing. But Crazy Parts, I think, are doing the closest ones yet. I'm not saying I'm a fan of Crazy Parts. It's just that their one's got the softer metal, which is similar to the stuff in the 50s and 60s. Alan Dingwall pickups here I'm in the UK. Alan Dingwall, for me, is producing the best pickups for this kind of style. I was using Mojo pickups before, but then I heard Alan Dingwall's, they were better, so I went to these. They sound more like the vintage guitars that I'm playing. But I don't own, by the way. So there you go. That's really my 2 cents, my opinion. If it's worth anything, probably worth nothing. But I'm going to give you my opinion anyway, because that's what I do. And then it's up to you whether you want to take on board what I've told you, implement it on your own guitars. For me, some people are like, oh, I've got a guitar, I don't want to mess with it, I don't want to change anything. But you can always put the stuff that you take out in its case. I've got a lot of friends that do that. When they change the tremolo or even the arm, anything, they put that in the guitar case. They leave that. So if they ever sell the guitar, they can put everything back. Because when people buy a guitar, especially a Fender custom shop, they don't want to buy the mods. They want to have exactly as it was. That's why these guitars, these copies are great, because I got this ESP guitar. It was worth over $2,000 new. I got it a lot cheaper, and then I could just go to town with putting some new bits and pieces in there and putting the frets in, and now it's a fantastic piece. And so there you go. You don't have to have an expensive guitar to do these mods. I hope that's helped you. I'm going to be back soon. Thanks for watching. Take care.